It's been almost a year since my last Mass Effect trailer breakdown, and since then I've discovered some crazy new details, like that this planet is 100% Alchera because of this familiar cluster that you've definitely seen before in Mass Effect 1, which opens the door to Shepard's return, and that this strange structure is actually first revealed to us by Legion in a very hidden conversation in Mass Effect 2, and the most sneakily hidden detail of the bunch, that Liara can breathe on Alchera because of a very hidden planet description in Mass Effect 3. Let's dive into it. The trailer begins with a shot of both the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies. Franchise director Mike Gamble responded to multiple fans on Twitter who speculated that this meant the next game will be a sequel to both Andromeda and the trilogy. All of his replies seemed to intentionally add fuel to that speculation, so I believe this first shot is supposed to imply both galaxy stories will continue in the next game. My way too early prediction right now for how that'll happen is that the two galaxies might interconnect via their supermassive black holes, allowing for wormhole travel between the two. In a research paper released in 2020, researchers hypothesized that some of the supermassive black holes in the center of galaxies may actually be so-called wormhole mouths. Both the Milky Way and Andromeda have supermassive black holes at their cores, but of course, wormhole travel is pure speculation at this stage. Nothing has been confirmed. Gamble is certainly trying to imply something though, by quote tweeting the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies smashing into each other. We'll have to wait and see. The visual shot of both galaxies is coupled with very faint beeping audio, one of the sneakiest hints in the entire trailer. Right at the beginning, before the louder vocal audio starts, you can hear faint beeping noises, which are actually dots and dashes of Morse code. And the Morse code is clearly conveying one clear message repeated twice. Dash dot, dash dash, dot dot dot. Which translates to N7. Very sneaky and very, very cool. After this, the vocal audio of a launch sequence can be heard while the camera zooms in on the Milky Way, and we finally reach our first major hint for the next game's story that requires a bit of sleuthing to uncover its true meaning. This butterfly nebula, also called a bipolar planetary nebula. Shout out to the community members that kindly pointed this out on my first trailer breakdown. After Googling important bipolar planetary nebulas to figure out which specific one the trailer shows, I stumbled across one nebula that immediately stood out. M76, the Little Dumbbell Nebula. This one especially stood out because it's located very close to the constellation of Perseus, which instantly made me remember a nebula with the same name from Mass Effect 3, the Perseus Veil, a huge nebula of opaque gas and dust that separates Geth space from the Terminus systems. I believe the trailer shows us the Little Dumbbell Nebula to jog our memory about the Perseus Veil, because what the trailer shows us next lies just beyond the veil. After this point in the trailer, a recurring theme is that every audio clip we hear has a double meaning with what we visually see. So it's going to be very important to pair both the visual and audio clues to reach the final intention of what each section of the trailer means. In theory anyway. Let's see it in action. As the camera continues towards a bright star, there is a huge megastructure of some sort that surrounds it. I'm very confident that what we see here is most likely an Alderson Disk. Thanks to chat for picking up on this in February's stream. An Alderson Disk is a hypothetical, artificial, and astronomical megastructure that can also be called a Dyson sphere. Even though this seems like a very random thing to include in the trailer, this megastructure has actually been hinted at before by Legion in Mass Effect 2. In order to hear this, you need to complete 4 missions in between talking with him, and since he joins very close to the end of the game, there's not many missions left to complete, hence why it's a very hidden conversation. Here's Legion discussing the megastructure and its significance.
We told you the Geth are building our future.
But you didn't say what it is.
A megastructure. The closest analog you have is a Dyson sphere. When completed, we will all upload to it.
What good will that do?
All memories will be shared. All perspectives will be unified. We gain intelligence by sharing thoughts, but we do not have adequate hardware for all of us to share at once. No Geth will be alone when it is done.
And this megastructure Legion mentions is actually present in Mass Effect 3, and lo and behold, it's located behind the Perseus Veil. In the Perseus Veil Nebula, we can interact with a Geth debris field that describes the megastructure Legion mentioned. The description says that the Geth placed ultra-lightweight constructions around the sun to collect energy, arranged in a vast array known as a Dyson bubble. Seeing this disk teased in the trailer, which represents the future for the Geth, along with multiple Geth teases for the next game, leads me to believe that the Geth's evolution is going to play a huge part in the next Mass Effect. And once we couple this visual shot with the overlaid audio, things get very interesting. The vocal audio, while zooming in on this Dyson bubble, is Arcturus Station, unknown vessel approaching, we need first contact protocols. Arcturus Station was destroyed during the Reaper War in 2186, so this audio is most likely what was relayed to Arcturus Station during humanity's first contact with the Turians in 2157. And obviously, the first contact of humans with Turians has nothing to do with the Geth, which is why I think this audio holds a double meaning. Maybe the audio implies that the Geth in the next game are going to have first contact with an unknown race. The reason I believe this is because the Geth have suddenly decided to start wearing knight armor looking clothes in the recent N7-day tease. I've gone over this in a previous analysis, but I doubt that the Geth would have suddenly decided to start covering up their bits and bobs by themselves. Based on my previous analysis, which involved combing through a Geth-centered comic released after both the trilogy and Andromeda, I believe that the Geth may have been influenced by a race we don't know about, engaging in a first contact scenario. It could be what the trailer is implying, but I wouldn't say it's confirmed just yet. The next visual we see took me forever to figure out, and quite honestly blew my mind, because I think the implication of the hint is absolutely massive for the next game. After the Geth Dyson bubble, the camera zooms in on the bright star, and afterwards, we see the stars in the periphery quickly expand towards us before slowing to remain in place. I think this sudden change in star movement from fast to slow implies that we jumped to a new cluster, and so the blue gas giant we see with 2 moons is in an entirely different cluster than the Perseus Veil. We can tell it's a blue gas giant and not a terrestrial planet because of the visual rings of gas that form on the planet's surface. Here are some gas giant comparisons from the Mass Effect wiki. Now, while the previous audio had a double meaning that may or may not imply something to do with the Geth in the next game, this audio-visual coupling is a bit more complicated. I believe the audio here is meant to direct us to which blue gas giant this is. While we approach this planet, we hear the line, "Humanity now stands as partners of the galaxy." Using the Mass Effect wiki, I clicked on every single blue giant in the entire series, including ones from Andromeda, and only one had significance to humanity joining the galactic community: Feynman. Feynman is located in the Boltzmann system, a system conveniently located close by the Citadel, making it a strategic place for expanding humanity's economic reach. This system is also home to Beckenstein, the planet that became the first wave of Earth's colonization efforts. So because the Boltzmann system has clear ties to humanity becoming partners of the galaxy, I feel comfortable hypothesizing that this blue gas giant is Feynman, located within the Boltzmann system. So because of the audio, we were able to figure out the planet itself, but how in the heck does Feynman hold any significance in the next game? We weren't able to land on Feynman, obviously because it's a gas giant, and the planet description doesn't hold any nuggets of gold either. It only goes into how the moons of Feynman are of strategic corporate interest, which is why I don't think the planet itself is significant for the next game, but rather the planet's name. Feynman is likely named after Richard Feynman, a notable American physicist known for his work in the field of quantum mechanics. I believe the main implication for this hint is that quantum mechanics is going to be important in the next game. Quantum mechanics is going to be crucial in explaining why Alchera features later on in the trailer, so stay tuned. After the gas giant, the camera tilts away slightly from its original trajectory, coupled with the line, "Arc 6 is away, Godspeed." This is a clear reference to the Andromeda Initiative's arcs from Mass Effect Andromeda. Gamble also confirmed on Twitter that the use of the phrase Godspeed was intentionally used to remind fans of taking off in the Tempest for the first time. With the mention of Arc 6, I originally thought that it referred to the Quarian arc, the Keylessia, but after recounting the arcs, I'm not so sure anymore. The Andromeda Initiative launched with 5 arcs and the Nexus, which would technically bring the number of arcs up to 6. However, the Nexus was never officially called an arc. The Mass Effect wiki page on the arcs does refer to it as one, but on the Nexus specific page, it's listed as a space station that the arcs attach to. So I personally view the Nexus as a station rather than an arc, which would imply that the trailer is revealing the launch of an unknown 6th arc, with who knows what or who on it. I went over in a previous video how the arcs can basically act as loopholes to solve race-altering problems caused in Mass Effect 3. Since the arcs launched the year before the Reaper War began, all the races on the arcs avoided the race-altering decisions we made, and especially avoided the craziness of the Mass Effect 3 endings. The arc races like the Quarians and Krogan were unaffected by galaxy-altering decisions, like whether we chose the Geth or Quarian side on Rannoch, or whether we sabotaged or used the Genophage cure. I assume that whatever or whoever is on Arc 6 is either going to act as a loophole for something in the next game, or they simply needed to avoid the consequences of whatever decision we made using the Crucible. But of course, referencing Arc 6 could just be a reminder that the fate of the Quarian arc will be addressed in the next game. We then move on to the most visually chaotic part of the trailer, a debris field littered with rocks, broken infrastructure, and an inactive mass relay. The rocky debris we initially see is another visual transition, which I assume means that what we're seeing is no longer in the same cluster as before. I haven't been able to visually pick out anything of significance in the debris, but again, it's very chaotic. While everything swirls around, we hear audio that's clearly from the Reaper War, with the lines, "Watch that squad fighter," "They're going to take down the Dreadnought," "Engines are going critical," and "Abandoned ship." This is then followed by a classic Reaper roar as the camera zooms in and past an inactive mass relay. Based on the previous audio of humanity being partners of the galaxy confirming Feynman, I assume that the audio from the Reaper War is supposed to be significant in figuring out which mass relay this is, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. My first thought was that this relay might have been in the Tartarus debris field, the massive debris field in the Milky Way's galactic core. However, that wouldn't quite match the audio from the Reaper War, because the Tartarus debris field was only significant at the end of Mass Effect 2. If I had to guess, I'd say that this is showing us an inactive mass relay hidden in some type of debris field that holds significance to the Reaper War. I don't know the significance right now, but I'll tackle that in Trailer Breakdown 3.0. After the relay and Reaper Roar, we hear the line, "Is anyone receiving this? We've lost contact," which I interpret as a loss of communication across the Milky Way following the Crucible energy blast. In whichever of the 3 main endings you chose, the Crucible's energy blasted out, destroying the inner rings of some of the relays, and partially destroying some others. And communication across the galaxy was only possible due to the networks of comm buoys that were built outward from each mass relay. So because of the Crucible's energy blast, those comm buoys are probably completely destroyed, leading to a loss of communication across the galaxy. Since this audio line most likely relates to the Crucible's energy blast, the last event that we know of from the Milky Way, everything we hear and see after this point is most likely an indication of what's been going on since the end of Mass Effect 3, which is super exciting because that means everything after this point represents events in the next Mass Effect. It's time for the funnest part of the trailer, the layered voices coupled with the visual of a very familiar cluster that we all know from Mass Effect 1. Let's start with the voices. Mellowforge on SoundCloud managed to isolate the layered voices into 5 distinct clips, which I'll play one by one, along with my own interpretation of each voice. First up, voice 1. I hear a emitted probe in A. Voice 2 is the most clear and most significant in my opinion.
Anomaly readings all across space. Anomaly readings all across space.
I hear anomaly readings all across space.
Anomaly readings all across space. Anomaly readings all across space.
I also think that this voice might be an Asari because of the unique longer vowel sound the voice pronounces the word all with. Voice 3 is the hardest to hear for me. It's very tricky, but I'm hearing it beats the heart. Voice 4 is a little clearer. I think they say they do match. Voice 5 is also very clear. This voice might say, upon an unknown horizon. These voices are most likely referring to some type of event that's happened sometime after Mass Effect 3, and I have a sneaky feeling that the quantum mechanics reference by using the planet Feynman will come in handy to explain what these voices are talking about. I'll get into my interpretation of the voices later on, because we first need to go over the mind-blowing importance of the cluster being shown while the voices are speaking. Visually, the camera pans forward and we initially see a blurred view of the cluster, and the peripheral stars zoom towards us before slowing down, as the cluster slowly becomes more visible. I take this peripheral star movement to once again represent traveling very fast to wherever this is, before slowing down once we've reached our destination. Now for the name of this cluster. It took me a very long time to confirm which exact cluster this is, but once I revisited Mass Effect 1, I finally found the cluster I was looking for. And it's the cluster you're inhabiting at this very moment, the local cluster, also the home of Earth. Comparing the local cluster from Mass Effect 1 to the teaser trailer, it very closely matches. Particularly, the 2 red areas on the galaxy map version match the brighter white areas on the trailer, as well as the general purplish coloring of both. Now, this alone might not be enough to fully confirm they match. However, when we link the cluster being shown to the planet below being Alchera, everything starts falling into place. Continuing with the trailer, we see a space vehicle descend to an icy planet with 3 moons. And even though those 2 characteristics might fit the description of other planets, there's only one planet that has 3 moons, an icy atmosphere, and can visibly see the local cluster on its surface. And that's Alchera, the nearby planet where the original Normandy was destroyed and the planet that Shepard plummeted to at the start of Mass Effect 2. During the Normandy Memorial mission in Mass Effect 2, Shepard can land on Alchera's surface. If we stand in front of the Normandy close to the cliff and look up at the sky, we can very clearly see the local cluster. It's been right there, staring us in the face. We just forgot to look up. Examining the cluster on Alchera, we can again confirm it's the local cluster. The 2 reddish areas match the local cluster's reddish areas very nicely, and the gap clear of color matches the local cluster as well. And fun fact, the original Mass Effect 2, which released in 2010, also features the local cluster on Alchera, so this isn't a new addition to the Legendary Edition after the teaser trailer was released. Huge thanks to community member Z for providing the Alchera footage from the original game here. So basically, having the visual of the local cluster above this icy planet confirms that whatever planet this space vehicle is descending to is 100% Alchera. I know some of you that are familiar with the trailer might be thinking ahead and wondering how Liara can breathe on Alchera, But don't worry, we'll get to that. The next thing the trailer shows is a person walking up an inactive Reaper, shielding themselves from the blowing blizzard. There's also another inactive Reaper in the background, and this is confirmed to be a Reaper by Gamble on Twitter. Showing 2 dead Reapers on Alchera is incredibly confusing, and my explanation for it is probably even more confusing, so I'll save it for later on in the video. For now, it's time to dive into the next part, which I believe 100% confirms Shepard's return. After the inactive Reapers, we see the same figure approach a snowy mound, and they tentatively reach down before removing something from the mound. In the next shot, we see they've removed an N7 insignia that can only be from an N7 helmet. This particular insignia is from the left side of the traditional N7 helmet we saw in the trilogy. Of particular note is the way this figure brushes the snow off the helmet piece. They don't just brush the snow off, they also very slightly caress the piece, which implies they know who this helmet piece belongs to. And of course, I think you can probably guess who I believe owned this N7 helmet piece. There's only one significant N7 who died on Alchera, and who'd hold personal significance with this figure, but it's actually a more complicated explanation than you think, so I'll leave that discussion for later on. After the figure begins to stand, we get a brief look at the space vehicle they descended in, the Mudskipper that we first saw in the N7 Day 2020 tease. We also see 3 other figures in the background, but most importantly, we finally see the identity of the figure that removed the N7 helmet piece. Dr. Liara Tassoni. Both the facial structure and freckles match Liara's. Now there's been some debate whether the wrinkles near her eye and cheek means she's centuries older, but I think a few other N7 Day teases refute this. All of the concept art we've seen so far seem to show places within the Milky Way, and the storefronts, the buildings, and the cars all seem to be recognizable from what we saw in the trilogy. If the architecture, and especially the cars, were looking exceptionally more modern with a futuristic vibe, I'd agree that Liara might be older in the trailer. However, it all seems very familiar. So assuming the game takes place closer to just after the Reaper War, I'm putting the facial wrinkles down to purely good animation. Comparing the trailer Liara to the Citadel DLC Liara, when she smiles, there's a small crease by her cheek, so I feel comfortable assuming her age is closer to when we last saw her at the end of Mass Effect 3. As to her fellow crew members' ages in the background, that's where it gets a little tricky. Gamble on Twitter has stated that we are able to correctly guess the identities of the crew, so we do know them. I've gone over in a previous analysis how the posture and mannerisms of the crew most likely match those of crew members on the Tempest in Mass Effect Andromeda, particularly that the middle humanish figure very closely matches the posture and helmet of Ryder. Comparing the two side by side, you can see the somewhat reflective glare of what could be the Pathfinder helmet, and the way Ryder's arms hang loosely at their sides is similar to the figure in the trailer. So at the very least, I do think that this figure is Ryder, but maybe the other 2 figures are from the Tempest crew as well. If I had to guess, I'd say that the Solarian is Callow, based on the reddish-looking armor they're wearing, and the fact that someone had to fly the Mudskipper, and that the Krogan-looking figure is Drac, but I find this less likely. Now I fully realize that I just finished saying that Liara is probably not centuries older, and obviously the Tempest crew being with Liara would most certainly imply the opposite. However, remember when I mentioned quantum mechanics was going to be a thing in the next game? Quantum mechanics, and especially wormhole travel, might be able to explain why the Tempest crew is able to exist in the Milky Way during a time after the Reaper War, even though they should technically be in Andromeda centuries later. I'll link a card for the full explanation of wormholes likely being a thing, because it'd take a little too long to explain here. And of course, these 3 might not even be the Tempest crew at all, so that explanation might not even matter. After Liara stands up, she gives the crew a small smile before it cuts to a black background. But we have to rewind for a second, because Liara breathing on Alchera without a mask isn't possible. Or is it? Alchera's description goes into how its atmosphere is composed of methane and ammonia, and a sneaky planet description hidden in Mass Effect 3 provides the answer as to why Liara can breathe this type of atmosphere. In the Cillian Nebula, the home cluster of the L core, most of its systems are home to Asari colonies, including the Teolia system and the planet Atebelos. This planet holds no significance to the games at all. Only the planet description is of exceptional note. The description explains that the planet is peppered with multiple Asari mining facilities, and it's this line in particular that explains why the Asari were able to mine the planet. Neither methane pockets nor cold temperatures were barriers to the Asari. Methane is not a barrier to Asari. I take this to mean that Asari can, for whatever physiological reason, breathe methane without repercussions. We don't quite know the full atmospheric composition of Alchera, but if Asari can breathe methane, then it'd explain why Liara can be on Alchera without a mask. Pretty dang wild. After the trailer cuts to a black background, the Mass Effect logo eventually fades into view with a message that still gives me chills every time I see it. Mass Effect will continue. And just when we think it's all over, the Mass Effect team snuck in one final hint, the local cluster sneakily hiding behind the logo. You can see the small squiggle near the lower part of the local cluster matches the first shot before the Mudskipper descended to Alchera, but this time the local cluster is horizontally flipped and mysteriously moving near the lower edge. Keela Salai, what the heck does this mean? Once again, I think quantum mechanics can help explain this, and pretty much all of the mysterious inconsistencies in the trailer. And I apologize for delaying the quantum mechanics explanation, but I promise I'll explain what it all means in a bit. Before the quantum mechanics explanation of everything, we first need to talk about why the main point of the trailer implies Shepard's return in the next game. I think Shepard's return is imminent because of two specific Mike Gamble tweets regarding the trailer. When the trailer released on December 10th, 2020, he tweeted the following: "I'm so lucky to be able to share our vision of the future of Mass Effect. I've thought about this almost every day for the past 1,360 days. 1,360 days before December 10th, 2020 was the release date of Mass Effect Andromeda on March 21st, 2017. The trailer's intentional hints were in the works since the release date of Mass Effect Andromeda, so this trailer is not to be taken lightly. Gamble has continued responding to tweets that discuss it, even from August of last year. Last August, Marco tweeted that the trailer showing the ice planet Alchera was basically fan service showing Shepard's original recovery in Mass Effect 2 and nothing more. Gamble chose to reply to this with, "Nah, it wasn't a Mass Effect 2 recreation." So this tells us two things. One, the trailer is not showing a past recreation of Shepard's recovery on Alchera. And two, if Gamble is still responding to tweets about the trailer, it definitely still applies to what they're doing in the next Mass Effect. So it's time to try and figure out why the heck they intentionally showed the recovery of an N7 helmet on Alchera. Here are the three facts that, to me, undoubtedly prove Shepard is being recovered by Liara. This thumb movement implies deep familiarity, and Liara only knows one N7 that well, either as a close friend or a lover. Commander Shepard. 2. The planet that the Mudskipper descended to is 100% Alchera. It has 3 moons, an icy atmosphere, and the local cluster is visible in the sky. And it just so happens to be a planet that has significance for one particular N7 plummeting to its surface. Commander Shepard. And 3. Only one major plot event happened on Alchera: the death, recovery, and eventual rebirth of Shepard. So to me, there's only one reason that Alchera would be featured in this teaser trailer. The Mass Effect team is once again teasing the return of Commander Shepard. I don't know why, but I might be able to explain how Shepard will return using the quantum mechanics explanation of everything. Everything in this explanation is based on the trailer and other teases to some extent, but keep in mind that anything I say here is in no way a confirmation of what's going to be in the next game. It's just pure speculation. First off, we have to ask ourselves a crucial question. Why is Liara able to pick up an N7 helmet piece on Alchera? There are 2 slices of time we can examine for when this helmet piece could have been there. The past, once Shepard died there, and the future after their recovery. Franchise director Gamble himself ruled out the trailer showing the original recovery of Shepard. And it can't be showing time travel to the past either, because Alchera didn't have 2 dead Reapers on its surface back when we scanned the planet in 2185. Dead Reapers would have been a big deal back then. Edie would have definitely pointed those out in our scanning. So this helmet piece isn't from the past Alchera, so maybe it's from the future. Thinking about Alchera in the future after the events of Mass Effect 3 though, it's highly unlikely that one of Shepard's helmets somehow found its way onto Alchera's surface. And the player can already recover the previous helmet Shepard plummeted to Alchera with during the Normandy's Memorial mission in Mass Effect 2. If the Mass Effect team intentionally included the local cluster in the trailer, which matches what we see from Alchera to a T, they clearly did their homework, and so most likely knew that the helmet is recoverable by the player. So the helmet being from the future is probably ruled out too. And obviously, half of the trailer wouldn't be devoted to showing the simple recovery of Shepard's helmet. This moment is meant to imply Shepard's return in the next game, because it's a trailer for the next Mass Effect. So if it's not showing the past Alchera, it's not a simple recreation of past events, and it's not showing the future Alchera, then how in the world is Liara picking up an N7 helmet piece on what is clearly Alchera? Enter the weird and wacky world of quantum mechanics. I think that what the trailer shows us is an Alchera from a parallel world, which is explained in the quantum mechanics theory of the many worlds interpretation. And I believe this absolutely unhinged explanation might be possible for the next game, because the trailer teased the planet Feynman, a voice declared there's anomalies all across space following the Reaper War, and a distorted-looking version of the local cluster was carefully hidden at the end of the trailer. Let's first dive into the planet Feynman's significance. Feynman was a physicist known for his work in quantum mechanics, and one of the many theories this field of physics is known for is the many worlds interpretation. The many worlds interpretation holds that there are many worlds which exist in parallel at the same space and time as our own. And if this is true, then what the trailer might be implying is that this Alchera we see, where Shepard has yet to be recovered, is from a parallel world. What I believe we're seeing is Liara and crew hopping to this parallel world, recovering the Shepard that died on that world's Alchera, and then eventually returning to our world. And there's 3 voice examples in the trailer that back up that crazy theory. Voices 2, 4, and 5. Voice 2 says anomaly readings all across space. Voice 4 says they do match. And voice 5 says upon an unknown horizon. My interpretation of voice 2 is that anomalies are present after the Crucible blast that ended the Reaper War, allowing for parallel worlds to be visited. Voice 4 saying they do match could be referencing the Alchera from a parallel world, matching the circumstances of our world. That is, whatever parallel world they were looking at had a recoverable Shepard on Alchera. This parallel world would also explain why there's dead Reapers on Alchera, and a dead Shepard. Maybe in this parallel world, the Reapers were taken out by a force other than Shepard, and so Shepard wasn't needed to fight the Reaper War, thus being left for dead on this world's Alchera. And finally, voice 5, who says, upon an unknown horizon. This could refer to crossing the unknown horizon of the anomalies to reach parallel worlds, and one of those anomalies might be represented by the distorted local cluster at the end of the trailer. The local cluster we first see in the trailer isn't distorted, maybe because it's the parallel world's local cluster that Liara and crew see when they first arrive. But the local cluster we see at the end of the trailer is horizontally flipped and distorted, representing our original world's local cluster, which might be plagued by anomalies. This distorted local cluster might be the way that the Mudskipper crew would return to our world. In this way, the trailer might be showing us the recovery of a parallel world Shepard, implying that the Shepard that's brought back to our world, back beyond the horizon, is a Shepard from a parallel world. I've tried analyzing this trailer and explaining its hints in multiple ways for the past year, and this is currently the only explanation that makes any logical sense to me, which I get is very strange because this is so far removed from anything the Mass Effect games have ever done. But again, it's the only way I can currently explain why Liara is able to pick up an N7 helmet piece that belongs to Shepard on Alchera. So Parallel World Alchera and Shepard is the explanation I'm running with once again, until more details are provided to us. And so, those are all the new details I found this time around. Enjoy all the hints and speculations in Trailer Breakdown 2.0. If there's anything to take out of this analysis, it's that Shepard is 100% returning, regardless of how or when. But of course, Shepard's return won't matter one bit if there's no proper way to tell the next Mass Effect story. And with hints of the next game taking place in the Milky Way, potentially without a large time jump, then how the heck will the Mass Effect 3 endings be resolved? There are countless theories that could explain how it could all work, and I provide my 3-step solution to solve the Mass Effect 3 endings in this video right over here. See you there.